All right, welcome back to Blue City Reviews. Thanks once again for watching. I actually wasn't planning on discussing We Need to Talk About Cosby, a new Showtime series from director W. Kamau Bell. I thought, well, I'm going to watch this for educational purposes because I come from the Cosby era, right? I was right in that sweet spot in the mid 80s where my parents and I would sit down and watch Cosby along with Family Ties, but definitely Cosby was the priority for my parents. And, it was I don't want to say it was like going to church, but it was pretty close. In fact, we never made it a point to go to church as a family for the most part. We made it a point to watch The Cosby Show. And I also remember sneaking into Leonard Part 6 for free as a kid back when we were just young, youthful, spritish idiots who would pay for one movie and then jump from theater to theater, get in like 4-5 movies in a day and have our mothers pick us up at the end. But I digress. I remember Leonard Part 6 being extremely funny as a kid, as a movie made for kids. Never thought his stand-up was very funny. I was always more of an Eddie Murphy, Bill Hicks type of guy. In fact, I always agreed with Bill Hicks that anybody pretending to be that puritanical, anybody pretending to be that pinstriped away and perfect is hiding a deep, dark fucking secret. Now, he wasn't talking about Cosby specifically, but that mentality still applies here because he was pretending to be so perfect, and obviously he wasn't. My beautiful fiance is trimming some knots off the dogs, so if you hear some frustrated noises in the background, that's just my lovely lady trying to get these burrs and shit out of Daisy's fur. Anyways, we need to talk about Cosby. It's 4 episodes. They're pretty long each. I mean, I would say about an hour. I didn't have a stopwatch, but I would say this is like a 3.5, 4-hour long experience. As I said, I'm a fan of film, so I almost needed to watch this, because Cosby, while I'm not a huge fan, as I said, his stand-up wasn't for me. He did, quote unquote, entertain me as a kid, and to find out that he was engaged in this type of destructive perversion was absolutely mind-blowing. So I went into this knowing it wasn't going to be a fun experience and knowing that I just sort of owed it to myself to watch it because I've devoted so much brain space to this piece of shit. What surprised me about this series, and if you don't want to pay to see it, it is available as a free Showtime trial on Prime, if you have Prime already. What surprised me about this is how lively it was and how much more educational it was than I thought it was going to be. I expected to learn a little bit here and there, but more in terms of the darker side of things, right? What his victims had gone through. I can't even imagine having your hero suddenly drug you and whip out his dick, right? It's like a nightmare. It's like living a nightmare. I was expecting the movie to dwell on that. And while it gives full attention to the victims and that disgusting phase of his career, which is now basically his legacy, it also is a big eye-opener in terms of what he has done for our culture as a whole. And the good he has done, I mean, specifically for the African-American community, as this documentary points out, but just to American culture as a whole, he's done a lot of good. I didn't know about the work he did for black stunt people. I didn't know that he was one of the pioneers in the industry who was fighting to get black stunt people in movies, on screen. I didn't realize that, white dudes were painting their skin black, even for African American women to do stunts like well into the late 70s and 80s. I didn't know that. So that was astounding. And the movie is filled with information like this. And, maybe he was always this disgusting rapist pervert. The movie makes strong evidence to the case that he was doing this throughout his entire career. But the dichotomy of how he was able to simultaneously make the lives of the majority of Americans better is pretty bewildering. And that's really the discussion that this documentary series wants to have. It's not so much can you separate the art from the artist, right? Which is just sort of the baseline there, the baseline discussion. It goes a little deeper than that in saying that Bill Cosby is like the anomaly. I mean, he was so big. I mean, this isn't like Kevin Spacey or something, right? Or Marilyn Manson or something like that. I mean, there were rumblings forever about those two people. And specifically with Marilyn Manson, I've been to those concerts. I'd known groupies. I knew who he was. But with Cosby, it's a whole different thing. And it really sort of made a generation who was sort of more or less raised by TV, because our parents in the 80s were working a lot. We have to sort of reevaluate like what our fucking ideals are and whatever made us think this guy could be America's dad. And how easily we're lied to. We are so easily lied to by media personalities. And a lot of us would like to think we've come a long way. But have we? Have we really? I'm not so sure, man. I'm not so sure about that. So we need to talk about Cosby. I'm not going to go in depth on the episodes. They're divided thematically somewhat, for the different phases of his career. And this actually does cover his recent acquittal a little bit. They're in the middle of a few of their final interviews, right? Their final round of interviews when that news breaks. So it's intriguing. Intriguing is sort of putting it lightly. It's tragic to see their reactions to that. This whole thing is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for everyone, obviously, especially the victims. That goes without saying. I mean, I'd be willing to bet the overwhelming majority of us know somebody who's been a victim of, some sort of sexual abuse, if we haven't ourselves. So, I think that this film is not going to be a fun experience. This series is not going to be a fun experience. But I'm surprised to say that you should watch it. I mean, really, if you've got Prime, it's a free Showtime trial. You cancel it after you've seen it. Very educational, and it's just a very unique question with this gentleman, and I can see equally both sides of it. There's an interesting clip in here with Colbert and Seinfeld, right? And Colbert's like, I can't separate from the art from the artist here, and Seinfeld's like, well, that's the easiest thing in the world for me. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but they're both on different sides of it, and they both make perfect sense. So we need to talk about Cosby. Compelling shit. I recommend it. It does make your stomach churn at times, but if you've watched any amount of The Cosby Show or his stand-up specials, it might be required viewing. You should probably check it out if you can. All right. Thanks once again for watching Blue City Reviews. Hopefully, I'll be covering something a little bit more uplifting next time. Cheers.